Hi everyone, we're back. Sorry, missed last week. Hey Derek, how are you?
Man, I'm doing great. I appreciate it.
Good,
How are
good,
you?
good. I'm good. I'm good. Sorry guys, we missed last week. We're trying to figure out the schedule here. I mean, lots of things have been changing. I mean, as you know, we all have sort of a day job, and sometimes jobs kind of take over our life. But we are back here. We have lots of interesting stories today. If you don't mind, I'm going to directly jump in. So one of the things that I wanted to start with is I remember in last episode we talked about how SaaS is dead. I mean that sort of narrative is still going in the market. Um, so this is sort of taking another point of view at this market. Like we have all this powerful technology in our hand, and how companies, and especially small companies or large companies, are using it, and how that's going to shape which sort of company survives this market. So this is a combination of a couple of blogs that I read recently, and I thought those are powerful. So who's going to be in the arena, right? And who's going to be kicked out? And and I know lots of startups are getting lots of pushback saying, "Hey, model provider is going to do this." And we gave some examples last week, or last episode, that say, "Hey, focus on the outcome. If your product is focused on just a workflow, I take data from here and there, then you're probably going to get very squeezed out because Anthropic is going heavily on co-work, and we're seeing this every day, right? They have plugins now, and they're doing enterprise, and suddenly we're seeing that it's affecting stock price. So lots of moving parts happening. So this is regarding how AI is getting sort of adopted by incumbents, large organizations, right? Now we are seeing this already. Lots of 100 million plus revenue companies are adopting AI, and they're building using MCPs. They're talking about we are building cursor for X. But I felt like both these two blogs provided one very nice heuristics, which I thought was very powerful, which is that if you're in part of a large organization right now, and sort of anything that feels like taking more than a day, I know it's a crazy talk. I mean, I'm sure there's something takes more than a day or sometimes weeks, but it's a good heuristics to use to understand your processes and workflows that you have. If anything that takes more than a day is usually a bad sign. If you think about it, the same models that you guys have access to, large companies, the same models the startups have access to, they're going to move really, really fast. And I've been seeing lots of trends in here, right? Now startups are going for bigger and bolder ideas. They're not saying that, hey, just because this is a legacy business and I'm just going to take a piece of it. They're saying, what if we rewrite this whole industry? And I'll give you one example, Derek, which is sort of interesting. I'm process of building agenting, right? I mean, we haven't talked about this. This is the finance tool, and we
It's
depend on
beautiful
lots of.
too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. We build on lots of legacy systems like QuickBooks and other CRM systems. And at point to point, we ask the same question: why are we relying on QuickBooks? QuickBooks is sort of designs in a very old system, and we kind of challenge ourselves: what if accounting system is built for AI agents, right? What is that going to look like? And this type of intuitions and discussions are constantly happening in the market right now. So that sort of forces startups saying, hey, maybe I'll rewrite the QuickBooks. Maybe there's a better version of QuickBooks I can build, because coding and producing these functionalities are cheap these days, right? I mean, that's why I feel like startups are taking much bolder steps. Well, what's your thoughts on that?
So yeah, let's look at it. Let's look at something. You mentioned your product in particular.
Mm,
Um, what's fascinating is we're seeing when you're talking about legacy and when you're talking about currently where AI is being implemented most is in the decision
mm,
making, that decision layer.
right, right.
Most of the legacy systems don't have a decision layer
Mm,
that is probabilistic or predictive. It has a
mm,
very deterministic, but not a probabilistic or predictive. What's interesting, what I find interesting about this is when you can predict like in this financial situation, a cash flow bottleneck ahead of time, a week, a
mm,
days, or ahead of time,
yeah,
and a
yeah,
person can easily approve to
yeah.
be able to get, to resolve that. They didn't have that. It usually they had this cycle that was a longer horizon before they
Right.
even knew, and they was
Right.
already going to be impacted by it. So you're talking about changing the whole dynamics just by adding that decision layer and really helping with that decision layer or the analytics. And I'm seeing this across different platforms.
Right.
Where AI is being implemented in these legacy systems is how can we make more or better predictive decision making, and
Mhm.
that that within itself, all these companies are struggling trying to figure out where
Mhm.
where to
Mhm.
where exactly to implement it that's going to have the most highest reward
Right.
possible, that's going to help us survive. Now we're all in this survival mode now.
Right.
I mean, it's yeah. We're all in survival mode. That's why you see Wall Street in such big bifurcation and flux right now. These systems that we were relying on maybe just a few months ago, these software systems we was relying on, these vibe coded software, pretty brittle, are
Yeah.
disrupting and basically deflating those SaaS companies
Right.
almost in half.
Yeah.
And you're not even fully smoked out the software, but
Yeah.
it's that big of a threat to say
Yeah.
that this software can outthink
Yeah.
what we're, which means we're
Yeah.
offloading a lot of thinking onto the software, and that's what we're
Yeah.
getting used to and expecting. And these legacy
Right.
systems can't compete with that. They can't
Yeah.
figure out how to integrate it intelligently within the stack to make
Right.
it of value and be able to capture that value. So they're struggling with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, you obviously read this Cintrini's article that came out a couple of weeks back, right? I mean, so that article, I mean, I'll put it in the show notes here. That article sort of paints this view of. It's quite depressing, actually. That's why I didn't cover this story here, but it's worth mentioning what you pointed out here about vibe coding. So this article sort of talks about a high level. It talks about, I know lots of people are talking about AI is going to create this new roles, new job opportunities. This article sort of paints another view. What if it doesn't? How the spiral effect of this economy with the job cuts, it's pretty depressing how it's going on. But there is one interesting point. I think lots of companies going to take leverage now. It's not about, I know lots of companies says like, no, nobody's going to build their CRM again. I know we can vibe code a CRM, but they will not. But what negotiators in the company is going to use is that they're going to use that as a leverage. So let's say if I'm just another CRM, it could be Salesforce, whatever, X CRM. When the renewal come, there is a new option on the table now. That option never existed before. That option is we can build this on our own,
In house.
in-house. Maybe they will not. We understand all the problem, but that option itself is a huge leverage for the buyers. They'll say, no, I'm not going to reduce 30%. Otherwise, you're going to build on our own. That will have a tremendous. This is what you're seeing in the market right now, right? This reflection of that. Hey, SaaS business is going to have a hard time generating revenue because now we have a new option on the table.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's so. But on the flip side, though, so if you are really truly built, what's a builder's going to do? Because we focus tons of builder. Our audience is a huge amount of builders here. I think you should focus on the constraint, not the feature. I mean, if your discussions, your idea starting with just going to add AI on top of that, not a good idea. No, not a good way to start it.
That's
Think
not
about the,
defensible. It's not
yeah,
defensible
that's not
because
defensible.
someone else can come and throw AI right on top of it.
Since
What
there
you
might be a better interface. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something I always keep going back saying is you got to look fast forward. You got to see where it's all converging to. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you got a agentic layer on top of your stack where these
Mm-hmm.
agents are performing like they're your AI workforce within that application or whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
that you put in there. Being
Mm-hmm.
able to not just orchestrate them, orchestrating is one thing, but being able to keep them from drift,
Mm-hmm.
from creep, from
Mm-hmm.
collision,
Mm-hmm.
them, basically colliding when one is making a decision that seems orthonormal to the other decision that's being made, contradiction to the other one.
Yeah.
How is that being conflict resolution? How is it being resolved so that
Yeah.
system? So I think what starts to happen is those people that can actually start to solve those higher level to where they can get these agents
Right.
orchestrated and keep them on track is going to be the
Right.
winners.
Right.
And that's just more than just throwing the AI. It's understanding the complexity of the system itself and
Right.
how it
Right.
should work. Yep.
Right. So this some of this ideas that I've been talking about came from Packy's article. I mean, so I love his writing. Obviously, guys, do check it out. It talks about lots of interesting stuff. I mean, stuff that we should be thinking about nowadays. If we are starting a business, where should we start? Like Derek said here. I mean, focus on the constraint, not just hey, I'm going to build a nice little AI or slap an AI chatbot on top of that. That will that will not be defensible.
That was a 2024 thing because we didn't know what AI is
Yeah.
capable of, so we just throwing it on
Right.
every. We throw it
Right.
on. We would throw it on apple pie if we could see what it would do, you know. But yeah,
Yeah.
so no more slapstick AI. We got to really
Right.
think. Yeah,
Yeah. Really think, understand the domain. I think the punchline is what's the constraint? Figure out the constraints. It will be ugly and difficult, but that's going to be your moat. Figure out, then try to own that layer. Could be a transaction layer, could be that outcome, could be the nasty data density, could be you have your own custom domain data. Then try to go high ground and branch out as fast as possible. This is where you win. Incumbents going to take more than a day to figure this out. All right, that goes back to the probably the next most interesting story you're going to talk about is so there was a recent podcast from Anthropic is making so much news lately, right? Each
yeah,
each tweet, each
yeah.
post is sort of either crashing market. And later on, I want your opinion on this too, why they're doing it, but we'll not focus on that. We'll stay technical here a little bit. So in this podcast with Darkesh Patel, Anthropic CEO Dario, and they talked about so the most obvious questions, right? I mean, LLM is out for how many years now? A couple of years, maybe 3 years. It's crazy what happened. So it talks about okay, what's next? Is this models getting better? What's happening? And I want to ask you questions before I dive into my notes here. I mean, what's your point of view on this? Now, I know the mission, the learning patterns have changed. These companies are doing lots of more pre-training. Now there is reinforcement learning. Are we scaling like we used to before, or it's kind of plateaued right now? What do you think?
So are we scaling like we meet before? When you say before, what can you give me some context around that real quick?
Like when you started, I mean, I think good question. I think when the model releases were happening very frequently, right? With ChatGPT, what is the 4, then 5 came out, 5.1. Every increment, there was a drastic improvement on capabilities, right? The intelligence. But right now, every release that comes in, I mean, I don't see fundamental improvement. Like Sonnet to Opus 4.6, for an example. I mean, give code. I mean, it's good, but I cannot point out saying, hey, this is where the model is actually doing better than the previous one, if that
Okay,
makes sense.
no, totally get what you're asking for. We
Mm-hmm.
earlier we were solving context windows, we were solving capabilities. How far is these models? What are they capable of? But those were just the model itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now scaling is about adding these models to advanced complex systems in basically as a multiplier to whatever the capabilities are. So we're starting to see that the model itself is okay. That's no
Yeah.
longer the differentiator. Before we were scaling to see how big we could go with it, how far, what capabilities would emerge from it. Then it
Mm-hmm.
was okay, we got to get this context window under control because we
Right.
need more context to be able to feed it because it can basically see all these different patterns within it, but it was collapsing on just a few. So that was the way we were scaling in. Now the way we're scaling is we're scaling LLMs as a system, as part of a system, operating system. So that's what agentic is now we're just wondering how can we scale the agentic nature of it. So it's moved from just a single model to the agentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's what the fear of, and we're going to get into this or maybe touch on it maybe this week or this time or next week, is the Department of Defense and how they use it within uh, uh, use Claude within their surveillance system.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's one couple of points that I've noted here that are sort of interesting. I think there was a little bit of conflict between them, and which I thought that was podcast was interesting. That's why I added this in our notes here. So obviously, Dario's viewer. I mean, I think is very very optimistic about how Anthropic models are evolving, how fast things gonna change and disappear, jobs gonna disappear. But he's keeps saying that main driver is still brute force scaling, right? More through more compute added data training time scalable objectives, which brings a lot of interesting questions for me. Is that they have they if they have figured out AGI right now, they know how to do it. If it's just pure a compute challenge to get to
Yeah.
AGI, they should be throwing all sorts of money to acquire more compute. But they're not doing that though, right? I mean, I know we are building data centers, but I don't see that as coming up over and over and saying we cannot give you AGI because we are lacking compute. That's not what they're saying. So to me, it
Not
feels
anymore.
like
It was OpenAI's mantra, right? And a
ah,
matter of fact, they recently, probably a month or so ago, disclosed their financials to say, with more compute, our profitability increased almost, par. So the more compute we
mm,
had, if we doubled that compute, we doubled our profits. So it was tying
mm,
profits to compute, and then somehow they was always trying to tie intelligence to more
mm,
compute. But we seen a very stark diminishing return on that
mm,
brute force. So brute
mm,
force isn't going to get us, to AGI at all, right? We understand that,
mm.
and
Yeah.
we
Mm,
started seeing a reemergence of narrow intelligence, smaller models, more specialized. Narrow intelligence started play because it was compute, carbon, energy, waste, right?
mm, mm,
How much we were spending on getting
mm,
inference was extremely high. So what we would call value to token, right? How
mm,
much value
mm.
were we getting out of tokens? Now we realize we can optimize these models, or basically take a big model, which is an ensemble of smaller models, basically pull out a model from there,
Yeah.
right? Have it
Yeah.
specialize on coding
Yeah.
and optimize inference because it's much smaller. We can make it sparse, put it on the hardware, the GPU, and then more people are getting more value per token out of that because the coding comes out way better. Instead of more of a generalized model, we have more of a specialist model, more narrow, and we're going to start seeing more of that. So scaling is going to become a distributed, much smaller models, more distributed across the platform, and that's what's going to really rock the
So,
future.
so he did mention validation. I think thanks for bringing that point up. So so he did say so. One of the huge limitation is obviously verification step, right? I mean, how we need to continuously test the output of the model to know it's actually doing right? That goes into the feedback of the training, sort of the iterative feedback loop, right? The reason these models are getting really good at coding because we have we know how to verify code, whether it runs, what the output looks like. Same with math, right? I think Demis talks about this too. That's why we're going to be seeing lots of improvements happening in coding and some fields where verification is easy, but there are lots of fields out there where verification is not that easy. It's not trivial to feed in. Here is the output going to look like, right? It
Yeah,
could be. So that's where he keeps saying, and I now I understand that point, saying that this is not going to work that way. We have to rethink differently, like you're saying, which also brings another point in the podcast, which I thought is interesting, is for the audience that reinforcement learning is not about we will not be able to get there for the same verification reason. We are not teaching this model every skill out there. It's not possible. What we're trying to do is that can we build enough generalization here so these models can figure out how to pick up new skills, right? That's fundamental. And and I like, I mean, there are lots of definitions of AGI or how will we know it and we'll get an AGI. And Demis mentioned a nice little sort of heuristic as an example here in his AI creativity. I'll put the links in here shortly. Where it says, for an example, let's see, the one way to test this out would be, what if we train a model, take a brand new model, okay? We're not going to show everything to that model. We're going to constrain the knowledge base of the model, cut off in 1911 to 1911. So everything prior to 1911, the model will know everything. And we will see what if the model can this model come out with theory of general relativity, like Einstein did in 1915, which I thought is a very brilliant, I mean, I immediately get it. It's a very brilliant way to see, hey, can a model come up with something new that it doesn't know about, right? This would be a really good test for that.
yeah, and so there's you touching on some of the stuff that theoretical physics being applied to these models, and he uh, DeepMind this is their wheelhouse, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they solve really.
They're doing this way longer than other guys here, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Out of the UK, was
Yeah,
acquired by Google.
yeah,
Now they're the ones that's the driving force behind Google right now. They're the
yeah.
ones that and Google can afford, because all the advertisement, pour billions of dollars in here and basically give away intelligence almost for free, right?
Right.
So there's a unique proposition there. But going back to that proposal, isn't that fascinating that it's I'm going to state one limit. I'm going to state the two things. One is a limit, a delimiter, and the other one is really just the, if this thing happens to do that, is, first of all, what why would the model look for general relativity or
Mhm.
gravity, special relativity or
Yeah,
whatnot? Why
yeah.
would it do
Hmm.
that? Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What if it came up with something much more profound based on, because I mean, there was an enormous amount of, matter of fact, the world that they had kind of architected, Einstein, von Neumann, uh,
Yeah,
Brown, all them, we're living in today, right?
yeah,
That's what powers our
yeah.
technologies today.
Right,
Shannon,
right,
Claude, all these,
right,
we're living in
right.
their world
Mhm.
now.
Yeah,
But why would it want to do that? But if it does do it,
good question.
if it
Yeah.
does do it, then we have a model that can model physics. Now it's very hard based
Uh-huh.
on, there have to be some, and see, Google DeepMind is experimenting with new architectures, right?
We have to, like you're saying, right? We gotta branch out. Have to.
They're not going to do this with a transformer,
Yeah.
right? Because the physics
Mhm.
in the transformer isn't going to allow it to recreate gravity.
Mhm.
That's already
Mhm.
been tested. There was an MIT test that came out that did it.
Mhm.
So they're experimenting obviously with a new architecture that maybe they
Mhm.
haven't told us about, that
Mhm.
may be more physics inclined to
Mhm.
be able to discover that. And that's going to change everything, because if we can discover laws of physics
Mhm.
and detect new laws, because I don't
Mhm.
think we found all the laws. If we can detect new laws, which are
Mhm.
always been there, just more subtle,
Mhm. Yeah.
that changes
It's everything.
the
So,
implications of that, based
okay.
on energy,
Yeah.
exploration, discovery, everything change.
Yeah.
Our whole world will change overnight on
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so there are a couple of more. This is
That
fascinating,
goes
guys. I
into
mean, yeah.
Darius. Let me go back. That goes in Darius's geniuses in data
Mhm.
centers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think we're on a. I think this is the year we're gonna probably see an emergent of new architectures,
Mhm.
not necessarily, maybe transformer based, maybe building
Mhm.
off of that, but we're going to see
Mhm.
emergent of that, because in order to get to that super or AGI intelligence, it's not going to be done by this next token predictor
Right. Right.
architecture. Yeah,
Right. Now, so on the other hand, I know we talk about lots of cutting edge stuff and what's happening in that. Another hand, I'm in a conference round with a bunch of accountants and finance people, CFOs, okay? And during conference, all raising hands, who is using CFO? There is always a bunch of skeptics, right? But there is still this common feedback that you keep getting, like, oh, AI make this mistake. How can you trust AI doing this? Here is a bunch of examples where AI horribly failed, right? And I think that's another view that he was bringing up in the podcast. Like there's sort of two sort of graph here. One is this learning graph you're talking about, the scaling graph of models, how smarter the models are getting. And there is this slower, is tagging along, but slower adoption graph, right? In enterprises, when you still keep talking about, we are talking about AGI and LLM fixing, coming up with new laws of physics. But in real world, when you see these enterprises, they're still hovering about, hey, I'm using AI to summarize my document. Oh, it can write contracts for me, right? I mean, I feel like we're still so behind. And I'm trying to understand, why is that? Is that because of all the traditional, that legacy processes we have? It has to go through approval, security. Is that slowing the adoption down, you think?
so let me say this.
Yeah.
So there's a stratification that's happening,
Hmm.
where you have these developers
Yeah.
that are developing something that probably won't hit the market
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Yeah.
They're on the frontier, the bleeding edge of
Right.
developing this technology.
Yeah.
And it has not yet saturated the market significantly. But these
Yeah.
signals that are coming from it are shifting the way we price our market today.
Yeah.
Because it's a Wall Street is nothing but
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
discounting
It's
market, right?
future.
On
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
future,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So the signals that are coming from this are
Yeah.
scaring the market.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's changing how the boardroom functions
Yeah.
as what they prioritize. And then
No. Yeah. No. I'm
that's
also
changing
also.
that's
Yeah.
changing
That's
how the
right.
companies, but the people that
Yeah.
are the workers
Yeah.
don't see it. Right. So
Yeah,
because
no, I mean, I think there is a deployment issue too, right? I mean, I feel like lots of folks, I mean, there are a couple of issues. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, lots of folks probably tried AI 6 months back where it was not that good and never went back. But 6 months in AI world is like 6 years, right? Things move, change so much.
yep,
But at the same time, you and I use Claude all the time, right? I mean, we know how to direct this agent. It's not magic, right? Nothing is magic. We sort of upgraded our skills to figure out how to navigate. I mean, does it make mistakes? Yeah, it does. But we know where to tap those in and plan it properly. I think there is lots of skill gaps, obviously, in large enterprises. Just because Claude can do smart things, you also have to know how to navigate, how to direct Claude to do things, right?
right.
And I think that could be another aspect because I haven't seen a really good enterprise use case where saying, oh, that's really interesting. All I hear if I ask my friends, how are you using AI? Oh, it just writes code for me. It summarizes email. None of this is interesting.
No impressive.
Okay.
Very boring.
No, nothing
So
impressive.
AI
Very
is
boring.
boring at that level, right?
Yeah.
AI is
Yeah.
very
Oh,
boring.
it drafts my email, reviews my stuff, help me find things. Okay, great. I mean, we already had those things before. I mean, what's new stuff you're doing? Last thing I want to mention in this story, which I thought I think is very, very interesting, and I've been thinking about this. You know how Anthropic is scaring everybody, right?
Yeah.
Quote unquote. We'll come back to that. Maybe not. Maybe next week we'll talk about what their intention. Because I sometimes question myself why Dario is going in every podcast and every presentation and saying all the white collar jobs going to disappear. Why do that? Is it really warning us, or is raise the value of the company? I don't know what's going on, but I've been wondering, like, what's their moat? Anthropic. What can kill them, for an example, right? And distillation is one very interesting way to think about that. And distillation for everybody is sort of think of a teacher-student metaphor. You use large model to train a smaller model cheaply. Okay. Now Anthropic came out with something just this week that they flagged that saying that Chinese model or Chinese open source model providers have been spamming Claude, like millions of tokens they're using. And they suspect they're doing this because they're using Claude to train their model as distilled version. Now, the reason this is sort of interesting to me, I thought it was very interesting. Obviously, distillation allows you to build something cheaply, right? So all I'm trying to say is that, wait a minute, if I have enough money, I could essentially use Claude's Opus 4.6, whatever latest model they have, which they spend billions of dollars probably training. But I can take that and sort of train a smaller model much cheaply and build at par performance, right? Isn't that
Right.
possible?
Yeah. Well, that's been done, right? That's what I think they're saying. DeepSeek is one of the companies that was OpenAI is now claiming foul after OpenAI stole copyright stuff from human produced data, right? Not synthetic, but human produced data. They're
So,
now claiming
yeah,
foul.
totally.
Someone stealing the
Yeah,
outputs from them, whereas they
yeah,
should say, no, that's fair game. No, they're playing the victim. They can't be the
yeah. So,
perpetrator and the victim at
yeah,
the same time. It doesn't make
I
sense.
makes sense because I feel like they will not never go in the record. Sorry, I'm bashing Anthropic today. That's not my intention. I feel like, to be fair, Anthropic might have done something similar when they were coming. They were a little behind than GPT before, right? Now they're at
Right.
par. when they were catching up, I'm pretty sure they have used GPT model to as a distillation mechanism to train theirs.
Because what
Which
else did they have? What else did they have at the time?
yeah, everybody, yeah, right, exactly. And which is interesting to think about. Then if copying becomes so cheap, then what is stopping other companies build a Claude like model? Nothing. I mean,
Nothing.
right now you guys can do it because you're sitting on this giant pile of billions of dollars of cash, and you have that compute and all the data you need, right? uh, then the world becomes very interesting. And smaller companies could think of, I don't need you. Like, I know, Derek, you are a big fan of small models. I think there is a viable opportunity out there to saying that I don't have to rely on Claude to build my startup. I can use Claude, use that as a distillation mechanism to build a smaller model that I will own and build my business on top of that. I think it's a
Yeah.
totally viable option.
Yeah. Well, I think Perplexity nailed it the best. And I don't know if we got time
Mhm.
to go into what Perplexity is doing and how
Yeah,
they're
please,
driving.
no, jump in. Yeah, that's a good
But
segue. Go for it.
before I do that, let me talk about they're taking a model agnostic approach to the
Yes,
whole agentic layer.
right.
They're seeing that models have kind of fell into certain categories themselves, right? What they're
Uh-huh.
good at,
Yeah,
and they're using it appropriately to where it switches between models to complete certain tasks. It's not just
right,
one model trying to do everything, right?
right.
That it will
Right.
switch between some open source models, Anthropic models, Claude models, whatever it is to get the
Yeah,
job done.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's the approach that new businesses are going to have as well, is this model agnostic approach. So
yeah,
that starts to what Perplexity is doing. If more companies start to take that approach, will weaken Anthropic's, one model to rule them all, right?
yeah, yeah.
Or one, it will weaken that moat right there. But
Right, right.
you know, what we got pulled up here.
So I pulled up this. This is the story that you brought up. Is that this is Perplexity's new this Perplexity computer, the new thing that they launched, which can use all these multiple models. Sort of, this is the open claw killer.
Yep, because they're on devices already, so they're secure.
So
Perplexity is already
talk
on
us for the audience who doesn't know. Give a quick 30 seconds overview. What is Perplexity computer?
So the Perplexity computer is basically a computer that can actually generate agents to complete workflow tasks, right? So you give it a task, it completes it. It actually has a long host of tools that it can call, whether it's calling your computer, calling other devices, and whatever's on there, whatever file system, whatever needs to be executed on there, and it completes it. And
Mm,
basically, everything that OpenClaw is, Perplexity is, but better, more secure.
mhm,
They're already on devices. They just secured a, um, a deal with Samsung. And what's so interesting
mhm.
about this, and you and I will probably agree, when we were looking at Perplexity, I mean, they were there for a minute. In 2024, they were there, and then shifted 2025. It was a steep decline, and we were like, look, they're done.
Correct.
They're
They're
cooked.
done. I
They're
call
done.
them. Call it.
I
Yeah,
mean, because
they're done.
they was kind of Perplexity kind of started off as this AI generated search engine,
Right.
right? Where it would curate all the searches, and then compile it into one
Yeah.
uniform search, and then it gives the citations and so forth. And of course, there was some hallucinations, there were some problems with it, but
Yeah.
overall, it was pretty well. And a lot
Mhm.
of billionaires that I met and know were using Perplexity, right? So common people, all the way from common people to billionaires, were using Perplexity for this and
Mhm.
getting quick answers, distilled, right? But now, what they knew that wasn't going to last some more, because Google immediately turned around. Now you can just hit Google in the
Yeah.
first, and I read that box all that AI generated box all the time. It's pretty good. It's pretty
Right.
consistent. It
Right.
saves me
Right.
from having to just go through all the
Right.
rank uh,
Right.
uh, uh, pages there, but or sites. But here's the thing: is Perplexity have been working on this. This isn't an overnight. They've been working on this for months,
Mm-hmm.
and now since OpenClaw kind of made its round and they
Hmm.
released it, and this is another thing. Sometimes being the first mover, you build up a lot of momentum, a lot of marketing noise around this. but
Yeah.
it's the second one that comes in and does it better than the first incumbent, and that's what they're doing. So yeah, so Perplexity's work thinking about operating systems and becoming that operating system that can control
Mm.
your environment, whether it's your, you know, your lights, your home, at work, your devices, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Perplexity is there.
So this is where
Way
I
more
feel like
intuitive.
I think this is done well. This is a very impressive comeback, I must say. The reason I always put Perplexity on the side is that hey, they're not a model provider. What's their difference? But they have executed this very well. Like Derek said, they've been working for a month. They had this product sort of tested internally by their employees. They learned from it, and they sort of released it. OpenClaw has their following, makes sense. It was a single developer sort of hacked in for weeks to build something so powerful that everybody sort of jumped into it. And kudos to him, right? I mean, this still shows with
Hold
all
on,
the
Neil.
money.
Neil. Hold on, Neil. Did you hear the latest story about the Meta executive who
No.
had installed
Oh
OpenClaw?
yeah. So she was she was like a security, like a safety officer or something, right?
Yeah,
AI
yeah, yeah. And
safety.
it
Yeah.
deleted all the emails.
Yeah.
And she was
And she
trying to
keeps saying,
stop. What are you doing?
she kept saying, yeah, stop it doing it. She had to run and yeah.
She had to run and
Um,
go turn off her
so I
MacBook.
mean, yeah. So that's sort of open source. Like OpenClaw is open source, hacked by a developer. 90% of the code is Vive coded. I mean, there is risk. I mean, giving that OpenClaw, I tried to play with it, and that I got really freaking scared running on my computer because giving it access to everything and have an AI agent go run on it. I mean, I'm not that crazy. I mean, some people are doing it. That's wonderful. I'm not. So this sort of ties in, sort of takes care of some of those problems that OpenClaw has, like Derek said, right? It's sort of built for enterprise users. That makes sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is fascinating if they truly nail this with product. I mean, I had some issues with Perplexity using their products earlier in terms of not working well, but if they truly nail this orchestration, because fundamentally they're solving the orchestration problem here, right, Derek?
Yep.
Now they're
Yep.
figuring out which model to go to, which is not a trivial problem. It's a pretty hard problem, but if they can nail that, that's wonderful. uh,
Absolutely. You know, talking about this security, cybersecurity issue, right? The security around
yeah,
these things. I think
yeah.
Claude, I think they just offered a pen test. Now, a pen test is dealing with cybersecurity. They run it to check the vulnerabilities
Mhm.
from your network application and so forth, which you might be exposed to. And these become like audit artifacts
Yeah,
that they give a company in order to tighten them up, right? Tighten up
yeah.
your product or service. Here's the key though. They cost thousands of dollars to do, and it's a human that usually does it. Now it could run for a few hours, run a pen test using Claude Code plus pen
Mhm.
test. You can look it up, Claude Code plus pen test, and you basically get something that humans would do, cost thousands of dollars, do it faster for about a cost of $60. So
That's crazy.
you can do your own cybersecurity pen test to make sure you are secure. And I think this is going to become more
Oh,
normal to.
are you talking about the cloud security, that the product they released recently?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
So that's again, that's disrupting the market
Oh
where
yeah, the cloud
cybersecurity
strike. Yeah,
companies.
cloud strike. Yeah, their value went down like crazy. So I have a question for you. If Claude knows how to write secure code, why can't Claude does it first time so that I don't even need this tool?
Cognitive load, cognitive load, and I
Wrong
think that's
answers.
yeah, cognitive load. So one model can't do everything. It can't because it's juggling
So
everything in the
this is a
tail.
good business model then, right? We all going to be addicted to use Claude code, which is going to produce insecure, quote unquote, insecure code. Then you have to buy this add-on product to make sure you. This is like crazy, right? It's an add-on over and over again.
Well,
Same business
what
models.
I think what we're starting to figure out is even with human beings, we're not just one cell. We're a
Yeah,
combination of many cells. So even our
yeah,
intelligence We
Yeah.
share with our gut and everything else. And so
Yeah.
what the symbiotic nature of intelligence.
Yeah.
And what we're going to start realizing is we got to start treating agents as a symbiotic, more of a shared intelligence, to where the memories that one cell may have can
Mhm.
inherit and be passed on to another agent. So
Yeah.
they have a thing called one context now. If there's
Yeah.
one context that's out. So people are trying to solve the memory issue. And what they're realizing is, regardless of the agentic framework that you may have used to build your agent, having an additional layer to where it can actually commit, like in a kit,
Right.
commit memories, right?
Right.
Whatever actions that it take, whatever project it was working on, whatever preferences a human may have had in one session, that carries off to the next agent
Yeah.
seamlessly, becomes a
Yeah.
collective intelligence, or a one persona. So
Right.
what we got to start doing is, when we start thinking about solutions, we got to stop trying to cognitively overload these agents to think
Yeah.
that it's perform. That's why sub agents was so basically, where is it all converging to? A symbiosis nature of
Yeah.
intelligence. And I think
Right.
those that start seeing that, start realizing
Yeah.
that, can start programming that. When you
Right.
program that, now you're going to start create,
Right.
maybe a defensible moat, because
Right.
however well you do it, you
Right.
know. So when we
Right.
start talking about artificial general intelligence, it's not a
Mm.
single intelligence. I see it
Mm.
as being a more of a swarm type of intelligence, symbiotic
Yeah.
intelligence, and distributed
Yeah.
intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what Derry was talking about, right?
Yep.
What is that? Yeah. Um, yeah. Data center, right?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because when you think about DeepMind, the CEO over at DeepMind,
Yeah.
Dennis, when you think about him, his thing is his approach to this AGI thing is, he's building sufficient intelligence to build better intelligence. He's not trying to go for the single shot to get to AGI. He's saying, I'm going to build a strong enough intelligence that it can recursively build the super intelligence. So
Right.
he's looking
Right.
at it a vastly different approach than what I
I
think
that
Gary is.
logically makes tremendous sense to me. That makes yeah. I mean, we'll just see how that goes. But I'm glad that somebody's taking a different approach. Now, you have another story that you brought up. I thought was very fascinating, which was
Cloudflare.
this new product called Pencil.
Oh
You want
yes.
to? Yeah, let's talk through this a little bit.
Talking about, all right, so in the market, real quick, a little context about the
Mm-hmm.
market and how it's being
Hmm.
disrupted. So
Hmm.
Figma, which was operating at a fraction of the cost as what Adobe was, Canva and Figma, uh, disrupted a multi-billion-dollar company called Adobe, which had this suite of products, and it was very hard to navigate the frustration. You had to have big, steep learning classes. It was the learning curve on it was very steep,
Hmm.
right? But when you get good, you were good. But again,
Hmm.
when they do some new releases, they changed up the navigation. It was
Right.
again having to relearn. So now you're able to do stuff through natural language. So what
Hmm.
happened is, Figma started coming up with a much more simplified interface, which was a
True.
big disruption for Adobe, right?
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
made design more pleasant, and it made it to where now more people begin to adopt it. So more consumers started using Figma, right? So there's a shift in the
Right.
market. They had to be
Right.
somewhere. They had to be acquired. It was something that's going to have happen with Figma. So
Right.
now what we were doing is we started creating these plugins to try to get the Figma designs, which we see over to the right. There was like, oh, it already has the grids and the components identified for the UI. Then we can just convert that to a React component
Right.
and have it write the code based on that. And so we created these plugins to help do that. Now the plugins at that time weren't all that great,
Yeah.
but that should have been a natural evolution for Figma, but Figma kind of set on it. They didn't move on it that way. So now here
Mm.
comes Pencil.
Because they're doing
Pencil,
really good with that model.
say that again.
They were doing really good with the model. They went IPO and all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, phenomenally well.
Yeah, yeah,
So Pencil's come along and said, look, I'm going to blur the lines even more from design to
yeah.
code,
Mhm.
to where
Mhm.
it's all in one. And
Yeah,
so your agent now it can actually create the whole component, the whole storyboard, the UI, and at the same time, it's creating the code, and you get to see
Yeah.
it and interact with it in real time at that. So again, they blurred the lines. It's free, right? You can't beat free. I love free. It's
It's free,
free,
really?
and it works.
I was
And it
tempted to
works.
try that out. Yeah,
And
that's
it
super
works
awesome.
with Claude seamlessly. Works with Claude, and it's called Pencil. So it's a designer and a coder's dream.
So in a nutshell, it's sort of if Figma and Claude makes a baby, this is what it's gonna look like, right?
This is what it would be. It would be Pencil.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Okay.
I think it was one guy at first, and then now he's got a small team, and he's
Mm.
got it, and he's got this. Oh, that pricing is new.
No,
The
but it
pricing
says
is
free.
new.
It
Oh,
says
it's
free.
free.
When I go to the page, it says free.
So he's still gathering the telemetry
Yeah. So
behind it to
in the
make it a
future, we
better
may
product.
introduce paid features in the plan. If we do, we clearly describe the terms. But right now, it's free. Go for it.
This is an
Oh, that's
easy.
crazy.
This is an easy.
Well, I'm gonna use
I
it
would
because
say
I
this is
have.
an easy multi-billion-dollar company right now. This
Yeah.
is easy because
So this is sort of interesting. What so we I mean I think it makes sense. The market is evolving now because companies are forcing not forcing designers wants to build now, right? Designers can build Vive code with Claude or whatever. Now just making that transition easier for them,
yep, yep,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
yep, and that's what it's about. It's about how do you
Yeah.
get the rest of us
Yeah.
onto the platform, not just the developers. I mean, there's right now you already know the market is being subsidized. Inference is being
Yeah.
subsidized.
Yeah.
So big VCs are pouring money into these companies. The companies then are trying to find a comfortable price for these developers mostly
Yeah.
and consumers to use
Yeah.
their model. So it was from 20 to 200 to 2000, whatever it is
Yeah.
after that. But whatever those comfortable, but they're being subsidized, meaning it costs way more. They're giving you way more inference for $200. You're almost getting $20,000 worth of token credits
Right.
for $200 because it's being subsidized by VCs. But
Right.
at a certain point, they got to figure out they got to close that gap. So the only way to close the gap is we got to get more common people using this and spending the money on this than
Mm.
just those that are building products or developers or so forth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's a super cool idea. I think that the handover for builders still feels very shaky. I do have a designer. But it's the there is still a gray area between when the design comes in, and so it becomes very nice for me to have a collaboration environment. The way I'm thinking about this, I can sort of use a pencil with Henry, and both of us sort of live vibe the design. Right now, I provide feedback. He makes a Figma design change. I come back. This sort of goes back to that other story that we didn't talk to. Maybe it's fair to bring that story up since we are talking about Figma here. So Figma did release something, an integration with Claude. Maybe this is sort of a gut reaction to Pencil. Maybe which sort of does this, but I think Pencil's execution looks much simpler to me.
mhm.
Where this is a new sort of shortcut they created where now you can build. If you guys watch this video, you will know. So one guy is an engineer, another is obviously a designer.
Got it.
So engineer can build stuff, and from the cloud itself, they could say, "Hey, can sort of send a designer saying, hey, this is what it looks like. Do you have any feedback?" Because right now that workflow is more like I'll take a screenshot and share with my designer saying, hey, this is what I'm building. Is it still looking okay? Right now, it sort of sends that request to Canvas so the designer can do edit while you're building the app. So sort of
It's
similar
a
idea.
tremendous amount of friction in the older system. It's a tremendous amount of friction of going back and forth and trying to understand. So
True.
here you have something that is bridging the gap between a designer and a developer, right? Software developer speaking the same language, right? So
Yeah.
a design change is a code change, but now it all happens simultaneously to where the person that's looking at the code can understand what the design change is And is again, it just blurs that line, which is blurring not only the process itself, but the roles that
Mhm.
both of these guys are now playing.
That's true.
Is blurred to where it's another abstraction, right? To
So
where it's almost entering this
if a
other realm.
designer can, yeah, if a designer can use pencil to build stuff, do we still need engineers?
Well, yes, yes. Matter of fact, let- drop drop this other tool that goes with this is so if you're dealing with React, there's a
Yeah.
thing called this guy that did it. It's called React Doctor. If you look up React Doctor, he just dropped it. I think people need to be using this, and it works with Claude beautifully as well. Yep, I tell you what this does. You install this,
Yeah.
it finds all those errors, and then all you have to do is feed those errors back into your model, and it'll fix all those for performance, especially right for better performance and for things that will jam you up. So if you vibe coding or if you're a builder, this is perfect. Use React
Oh,
Doctor and then feed it
does it
back.
work on the Next.js?
Uh,
It will write Next.js
it
and React.
probably is, Next.js is also React based pretty much, but
Yeah, yeah,
TypeScript.
yeah.
So, um,
I like this. So that means essentially I can create a stop hook that every time Claude makes a change, it will run in the stop hook, runs as doctor, finds the problem and sort of provides a feedback, right?
yeah, it's like telling Claude fix
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But it
yeah.
gives it specifications and for security performance and so forth. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's very cool. That's awesome,
yeah,
man. Awesome.
that's a tool that again I'm using that it was just recently dropped, and I think people should be aware it is.
Yeah, I will share this
Mhm.
right here along with that. All right, so I think we're up time here. We have maybe one last story, and this one I really like the idea. So one of the things that I try to do on every episode is obviously focus a little bit on research, some crazy ideas maybe. So this idea of let me open this up here, so then I can share the window. It's called. So you know what is Web3 is, right? Do you know what Web3 is, Derek?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Web3, yeah.
Yeah. the pro the promise that never delivered the blockchain. No, I still have some crypto investments, but they are doing
I didn't
horrible
know if you
these
was
days.
taking a
But
dig at me or what. I was like, because it was
so
pertaining to
I
blockchain.
remember in I don't know, I think most of what I do. But anyway, if you don't know, both of us are from Columbus, Ohio. So Columbus, I still believe, I still have that meetup group. If anybody's interested, I'm announcing it here to run this takeover from me. I'm happy to. I still have the Columbus blockchain meetup group. I think it's still the biggest one. I was really interested in blockchain back in days, but I feel like I don't know, I never delivered. But anyway, so I still like the ideas, though. I mean, decentralized. I'm
It
very
was an
passionate
uphill
about
fight against
decentralization.
regulation. It was an uphill fight against regulation. Now that
Yeah,
regulation is loose, blockchain has emerged back. We never seen numbers like this with Bitcoin ever,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I almost had hope that Bitcoin this year, based on the numbers from last year, that it was going to go to 1 million for real. We always would just talk. We was always just saying it,
I was
but
hoping for
we was,
150. A million
huh?
is kind of crazy. If million, I would have checked out, but I was hoping like at least $150,000, maybe 150.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like half. Anyway, so anyway, if don't worry about if you haven't had it over wave 3 is past. Now we have wave 4. The wave 4 is more obviously AI, right? We are talking about a world now where web is sort of browsed by AI agents, not real humans. What is that looks like? And this I think it's a much personal blog. I think Pete shared with me, which I thought really fascinating. This blog sort of gives an idea that without human, AI cannot act. Right now, we have sort of open clock and cannot buy servers. Right, there are still some limitations. So this sort of talks about like what if there is no longer sort of limitation in this, right? I've create first AI agent that earns its existence. So the theory here is that you sort of unleash an AI agent. The AI agent sort of have to justify, almost like Conway's Game of Life, to sort of survive.
Yeah.
And it needs to improve itself. It needs, if it needs to compute, it's going to buy its computes. Obviously, it's going to have an identity wallet. So I thought it was really, really fascinating. This is something you are passionate about too, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is where it's converging. All these big tech is converging on this, and along with fintech
Yeah,
and so forth, are converging on this agentic layer to the or basically building out protocols on
yeah,
this to be Web 4.0, and it has strong viability to
mm,
do. And so we see identity and wallets, permissible payments, compute
yeah.
and inference and deployment in real
This
world.
is interesting, though, right? This sort of means like this is something that are probably going to be harder for lots of people to let go of. Like having an
Permissionless
agent
payment.
without
Mhm.
no KYC, no human approval required. That's sort of a little scary, though, right?
Well, again, like Google just put out the UCP, which I think is going to become way more uh, uh, ubiquitous here soon,
Yeah.
which
Hmm.
is I think it's a uniform commercial protocol for agents.
Yeah.
Um, they also released, which was called a Web what is it? Web MPC.
Web
I'm sorry,
MCP.
MCP, Model
Yeah.
Context Protocol. They also released
Yeah.
that. What that does is it turns every website to become agentic ready. So those functions are easily converted into uh, agent functions that they can call without necessarily taking screenshots and trying to navigate
Yeah.
it through the browser that way. They can be on the
Right.
back end as on back end on the server
Yeah.
itself through the browser and call those functions, and they can make transactions in milliseconds as opposed to trying to go through the browser, taking minutes, fumbling over themselves, trying to, and then the moment that website changes, it's, you're burning through tokens. It's not getting the job
Right.
done.
So
So,
this recursive self improvement, which is obviously a very powerful idea in theory, but practice is sort of very difficult to do. Is it like, I mean, I sort of have a very high level idea. If you're building an AI agent, maybe you use the feedback to sort of optimize your own prompts on your workflow. But have you seen any sort of framework or things out there that allows you to build like self improving agents?
oh, yeah, yeah. So there is one, and this is what's happening, right? So
Yeah.
we're, you got to separate, you got to think of agents as just a carrier of information,
Hmm.
not the actual person or persona or anything. This is a carrier of
Hmm.
information. The
Hmm.
information has to be curated. Those are
Hmm.
curated memories that becomes part of a collective intelligence.
Hmm.
You can separate the memory from each agent and
Hmm.
build a collective memory.
Hmm.
What does that mean? So Monstra is doing it. Monstra just announced Monstra Code, Mastra code, where they don't do the compacting, and that memory is portable across all agents. So it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. Agents can act, and then they're just reporting that memory back, so it becomes part of the collective. So it
Hmm.
builds this epistemic and episodic memory that
Hmm.
you can just port. So what we need to start thinking about is stop thinking about making the model itself better. Think about building a graph, right?
Hmm.
A memory
Hmm.
graph that continues. Because here's the thing, it's something that I'm building, and
Yeah.
I kind of share with you. Is so
Yeah.
context graph, right?
Right.
So context graph is really, I don't know if you knew, you could take a drizzle ROM, which is just basically the schema that goes into the database, right? To where
Mm-hmm.
you're not tied into any particular vendor, but you can do a drizzle, which is a type safe schema,
Mm.
right? You
Yeah.
take this type safe schema. Now, what we typically had to do to create the graph, we would have to pretty much duplicate everything that we had in the schema and do it by hand manually. But now Drizzle ROM introduced GraphQRL together, and it auto
Mm.
generates the schema
Mm.
and the mutations of the schema. Now, check this out.
Mm.
You take that and it generates an endpoint.
Yeah.
So everything that's in the database, right, that's in the
Yeah.
schema becomes an actual function, which is a tool for the
Right.
agent.
Mm.
So if you have tables in there that deal with product, if you have tables in there that deal with pricing and everything like that,
Yeah.
instead of hard coding your agent with the tools,
Right.
you just give it one endpoint, and it can
Right.
discover on day one through what's called introspection.
So
Introspect is
so is it, so like okay, a tool, like okay, I got you.
so you instead of hard coding tools,
Yeah, I
when
got
the
you.
database changes, the schema
Mm-hmm.
changes, it just calls a schema, and then it can manipulate, it can do multi-step tasks or multi-step reasoning just by writing a simple schema and do all that
Yeah,
stuff. So you're
yeah.
bringing it closer to its ancestral root, which is data, right? You want to bring it
Mm-hmm.
close to data. Any agent or AI, you want to bring it close to the data as possible. So
Right,
building this means I give it an endpoint. So this thing, all the collective information as part of that it has
right,
permission or privileged access to
right.
becomes its tools, in
Yeah,
which now on day one, you don't have to retrain it or restart your conversation back over or try to copy and paste stuff. It can introspect and pick right
yeah,
up off any of the
yeah.
agents. It doesn't matter.
Right,
Any of the
right.
agents can pick right off of it. So what we really want to do is stop thinking about recursive building bigger and better models because they're already sufficient.
Mm.
We start building the graphs, which is an intelligent semantic layer that rocks above that. If we can do that, then it becomes we reach better intelligence because now everything that the other models were learning becomes a collective memory that one model has that it can call right through a schema and
Yeah.
use and picks right
Mm.
up. So imagine this: enterprise companies right now,
Right,
they have GraphQL. It's been out for a
right,
long time.
right.
The way I designed it is it will just ingest their existing graph of their entire enterprise, which is like this searchable query, to where now the model, as soon as it wakes up, has an endpoint and it can immediately call files or functions, whatever it's privileged to. And from day one, know exactly what it's supposed to do, its task. It has an ID whenever it commits anything or do anything immediately. So it takes the schema of the enterprise, which is this cognitive layer of the enterprise, and it ingests it in one endpoint. Beautiful. So now that
Yeah,
agent is more powerful from day one. No training, no fine tuning, none of that
right,
stuff. No having to hard code the tools. The schema
right.
is the tools, and it's all done through
Right.
introspection. Um,
Yeah,
there's an interesting thing that came out. Cloudflare.
mm.
I'm a big fan of Cloudflare, by the way.
Yeah. Hmm.
Cloudflare just shrunk the context window significant to where their entire API fits in 1,000 token calls. They just released this like a couple of days, maybe
Okay,
yesterday or a couple of days ago.
okay.
Before getting Cloudflare's API through like an MCP was a list of
Yeah,
all these tools that start to, you know, you only got like a 200,000 most of the time 200,000 token window. And it'll start taking up maybe 1/4 of that token window just to get
yeah.
the MCP and all the things that
Right.
it can do. But now they have an API endpoint that you can actually feed it, and it gives the entire Cloudflare infrastructure up up to about 1,000 tokens. I mean, think about what you can
How?
do.
Wait, how?
That's why.
It's like a bitmap or what is it? How will?
Take a look at it. It's a Cloudflare context window API. Uh, they just released it.
Flare
You asked the same
context
questions
window.
I was asking. How did you do this?
Context window API.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, let's quickly pull that. Maybe we'll make this a love story. So I like this idea. When I'm not able to find it, maybe we'll cover it next week in
We're covering
details.
next week.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting if next week, if you can, feels like you're building something. I find that fascinating. So that means one tool to sort of rule them all, sort of thing, right? A tool, your agent search connect to one tool, and that tool sort of guides the agent to what's capabilities and what things you can do, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
which is
they guide themselves. They just get so introspection through the graph query introspection. The
yeah,
way this
yeah,
basically works
yeah,
is you already give it one command and you just tell it
yeah,
the introspection, and you could tell it's these are the files, these are the types, and you give it that initial, and through introspection, it discover all the possible mutations and everything of the entire database that you can do. It's relationships and everything. the
I
files,
see.
and it's all type safe. So
I see.
now, if it needs to do something, take action or
Yeah.
something, it
Right.
knows the exact schema that it needs to write in order to make that action happen. So it's on the
Right.
server side. But
Right.
yeah, I'd be happy to show it. I'd
Yeah.
be happy to demonstrate.
It'll be interesting. I mean, we have done code before too. I mean, we don't have to build this, but we'll just walk through that. I think lots of users going to find this fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, next week is going to be hot. It's going to be hot because
Yeah.
I think you, like me, are wanting to let this sizzle a little bit. This thing with
Yeah.
Anthropic, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically letting up on their
Yeah.
safeguard, and
Yeah.
the government starts to lean a little pressure on them.
Yeah. Mm.
How far?
And
Because I mean,
I think we should also talk about, since we're going to be talking about Anthropic and government using AI for defense and whatnot. I think we should focus on how hackers are using Claude and other AI tools to do mass level cyber attacks. I think it's worth exploring that space a little bit. We never talk about those things
yeah, we
here.
got to cover. We got to. We can't just
Yeah.
talk white hat all the time. We got to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
black hat.
yeah. We gotta. I mean, I think this is some serious challenging issues coming up. With that said, thanks, Derek.
Thank
Like
you.
all the usual, wonderful. I really enjoyed my time. Hopefully, everybody did. If you guys have any questions or any new topic you guys wants to cover, anything we want to highlight, ping me, ping us. We're happy to cover them. Till then, take care. Bye.